All right, so we're going to continue on this video. I still left the exponent rules up here so you can see those again. All right, so on this part it says use the properties of exponents to simplify each expression. Write with positive exponents. And so that means that we might have to refer back to those rules of exponents, but on this first one it's a product. We're multiplying y to the 4/3 times y to the negative 1/3. And that means I'm going to add these exponents. So if I add, I'm going to have y to the 3/3, which is, whoops, y to the first power. So I'm just going to leave that as y. And then on the next one, I have 5 to the 1/2 plus 1/6. You certainly can put your fractions on your calculator to add them, but that would 1/2 would be 3/6. So this is 5 to the 4/6, and that simplifies as 5 to the 2/3. So just make sure that if you have a fraction that simplifies, you do simplify it as you're working through this. All right, so this next one is a quotient. For a quotient, we subtract exponents, and of course we would need a common denominator. So 3/4 would be 6/8, so it's going to be x to the 6/8 minus 1/8, and that would be x to the 5/8 power. Notice it says write with positive exponents, so we're finished with that. Okay, so for the next one, we are going to multiply the exponents by 3 because we're taking a product to a power. And so that's going to be 32 to the 3/5, right? 1/5. Excuse me, 1/5 times 3. And then on the x, that's going to be x to the 6/3, which ends up being x squared, right? And so if we simplify the 32, we'll kind of do that. So I'm going to take the 5th root of 32, and then I will cube that, and then that's times x squared. So since I'm simplifying, it says use properties of exponents to simplify, but I also need to simplify the 32 because 32, the 5th root of 32 is 2, right? So 2 cubed times x squared would be 8x to the 2nd. Now I did that with the 32 because you want to simplify it, and that's how I've shown you to be able to simplify is to go to radical form and then simplify from there. All right, so on the next one, in the numerator, we have to simplify first before we can do anything with the denominator. So this is going to be 2 to the 4th power, which is 16, and then that will be x to the 4/5 divided by x to the 3/10. So we're going to take the 4/5 and subtract 3/10, and that means that I would have to rewrite, right, multiply by 2, so that's going to be 8/10, right, 16x to the 8/10 over x to the 3/10. So that's 16, let's see if I can write that 3 a little better. 8 minus 3 is 5, so the x will be to the 5/10, which is 1/2. Now if you're using your calculator, you would just put in 4/5 minus 3/10 and go at that a little bit in a shorter way, but I wanted to talk about how you get there if you're not using a calculator. All right, on the next question, we're going to multiply 1/4 times 2. Right, so 2 times 1/4 would be 2/4, which is 1/2. And that's n to the 1/4, m to the negative 1/2, and n to the 5/8. And so then I'm going to simplify those, right? If I take 1/2 minus negative 1/2, right? So let me just write this out. M to the 1/2 minus negative 1/2 would be a 1, right? 1/2 and 1/2 is a 1. And then 1/4 is 2/8 when I have a common denominator. So that would be n to the 2/8 minus 5/8. And so then, I'm kind of running out of space here. Let me take this up here. Okay. Let me try that again. I'm going to have m times n to the negative 3/8. And then, of course, I have to write my 3/8 as a positive exponent. So this answer will be m over n to the 3/8 power. All right, and then we're finished with that. Okay, so here's a little bit different multiplication going on. We're going to basically distribute x to the 1/2. And when we do that, we will have x times x, right? X to the 1/2 times x to the 1/2, which means we add the 1/2s. And that just leaves me x to the first power plus x 1/2 plus 3/2 is 4/2 or 2. And so we're actually finished. That's all you had to do. So if if you're using your calculator, you just do 1/2 plus 1/2 and 1/2 plus 3/2. On this one, we are going to distribute y to the 1/2 with both terms on the second binomial, and then 5 times both terms. So that's going to be y to the 1/2 times y to the 1/2, which is just y to the first. That's going to be y to the 1/2 times 5. And then 5 times y to the 1/2. And 5 times 5. All right, so I'm going to combine like terms, right? These are like terms. So y plus 10y to the 1/2 plus 25. So you can see that you're actually using quite a few concepts that you have learned in the past. Okay, so on these, I'm going to show you how to basically simplify these radicals. So instead of having a 4th root, we'll end up with a radical with a root that's smaller than 4. And so let's start out this way. If we take the 4th root of 6 squared, now kind of working backward from what we did before, remember the index becomes our denominator. So this will be a 6, it's going to be 6 to the 2/4, which is 6 to the 1/2. So now we have the square root of 6 instead of the 4th root of 36. Now there are truly different ways to get there on simplifying these, but this is one way to do that. And we're going to kind of use something similar with this next one. So this will be y to the 6/9. Remember the index is the denominator, and z to the 3/9. And simplify both of those, right? So that will be y to the 2/3 times z to the 1/3. And notice it says to use rational exponents to simplify each radical. We're going to end up writing it in radical form. So this will be the cube root of y squared times z to the 1st. So you really have to know those rules that we talked about back in the beginning, because now we're kind of using that backward from where it was. Try to get rid of that. It's still got that there. Okay, I'll just leave it. All right, next. So same things going on here. We're going to use rational exponents to simplify. So when we rewrite this, we'll have a to the 5/10 times b to the 5/10. So that's a to the 1/2 times b to the 1/2. And remember, 1/2 is going to be a square root. So the square root of a times b. Okay, one more. So the next one will be, let's see, I think I'll go ahead and break the 4 down. So the 8th root of 2 squared times y squared. So that will be 2 to the 2 over 8 and y to the 2 over 8. And that means both of them are to the 1/4 power, right? Because we just simplify the fraction. So this will be the 4th root of 2y. And that's my last example, so we're finished with this video.